She only had $10 for an inhaler. The Millionaire CEO watched and paid for her entire medication. Lily Carter stood in line at Mitchell's pharmacy, clutching a worn wallet that held her last $10 and trying desperately not to panic. Her chest felt tight, not just from the asthma that had been getting worse for weeks, but from the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her shoulders. She'd already done the math a dozen times that morning. Rent was paid, barely. Groceries for the week sat in her tiny apartment. Ramen, peanut butter, bread, the cheapest options she could find. Her paycheck from the diner wouldn't come for another 5 days, and her tips had been terrible all week because the tourist season was over. That left $10. $10 between her and the inhaler that meant she could breathe without struggling, could work her double shifts without feeling like her lungs were collapsing, could sleep at night without waking up gasping for air. When the pharmacist rang up her prescription and said gently, "That'll be $32, Lily felt something break inside her chest. She blinked back tears, her voice barely above a whisper as she asked, "Can I just get half the dose for now, just enough to last until next week?" The pharmacist looked uncomfortable, sympathetic, but helpless. "I'm sorry, hun. The medication doesn't come in partial doses. It's the full inhaler or nothing." Behind her in line, a man in an expensive navy suit watched the entire exchange with an expression that shifted from casual observation to something deeper, recognition, understanding, and a growing sense of purpose. Ethan Grant had come to this small-town pharmacy on a whim, wanting to see firsthand how his company's products reached real people in real communities. But he never expected to witness the human cost of the very medications his company produced, to see a young woman choosing between breathing easily and eating that week. When Lily turned to leave, her shoulders carrying defeat like a physical weight, Ethan made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We share powerful stories about compassion, unexpected connections, and love that transforms lives every single week. Now let's get into it. Lily's alarm had gone off at 5 a.m. that Tuesday morning, pulling her from restless sleep into the grey pre-dawn light filtering through the thin curtains of her studio apartment. She'd been awake most of the night anyway, her breathing shallow and difficult, her nearly empty inhaler sitting on the nightstand like a ticking clock, counting down to crisis. She sat up slowly, testing her lungs, feeling the familiar tightness that had become her constant companion over the past month. The doctor she'd seen at the free clinic 3 weeks ago had been kind but direct. Her asthma was getting worse, likely stress-related, and she needed better medication, plus she should consider reducing her work hours to lower her overall stress levels. He'd written the prescription with sympathetic eyes that said he knew she probably couldn't afford either the medication or the luxury of working less. Lily pulled herself out of bed and went through her morning routine on autopilot. Shower in the tiny bathroom where the water took forever to warm up, instant coffee because she'd run out of the good stuff 2 weeks ago, checking her phone for her shift schedule at Martha's Diner, even though she'd already memorized it. Double shift today, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., with 3 hours in between to go home, rest if possible, and try not to think about how exhausted she was all the time. Before leaving, she opened her wallet and counted the money inside for the 3rd time that morning, hoping somehow the amount would have magically increased. 2 5s. That was it. $10 between her and complete financial emptiness until Friday, when her paycheck would be deposited, assuming Martha remembered to submit payroll on time, which didn't always happen. Lily pulled out the prescription slip the clinic doctor had given her and read it again. Albuterol inhaler, 90 mmCg, as needed for asthma symptoms. She had no idea how much it would cost, but she knew she had to try. She'd been rationing her current inhaler for weeks, using it only when absolutely necessary, pushing through episodes where she should have medicated, but couldn't afford to waste the precious remaining doses. This morning, she'd used the last puff, and her chest had barely loosened enough to let her breathe normally. She couldn't work a double shift without an inhaler. That was just reality. So the medication had to come first before everything else, even if it meant eating nothing but ramen for the next 5 days. The walk to Martha's diner took 15 minutes through streets just beginning to wake up. Lily kept her pace steady despite the tightness in her chest, mentally rehearsing what she'd say at the pharmacy during her lunch break. Maybe they'd have a generic version that was cheaper. Maybe there was a discount program she didn't know about. Maybe $10 would actually be enough, and she was worrying for nothing. But deep down, she knew better. Medicine was expensive, especially the kind that actually worked. And people like her, people with no insurance, no savings, no safety net, learned quickly that hoping for easy solutions was just another way to be disappointed. Across town, in a suite at the Riverside Hotel that cost more per night than Lily made in a month, Ethan Grant woke to his phone buzzing with notifications, stock alerts, meeting reminders, emails from executives across 3 time zones, the usual digital cacophony that greeted him every morning. He silenced the phone and stared at the ceiling, feeling the familiar hollow dissatisfaction that had been growing stronger lately despite every metric of success suggesting he should feel triumphant. At 35, Ethan had accomplished everything he'd set out to achieve. He'd taken his father's small pharmaceutical company and transformed it into Grant Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest medication manufacturers in the country. He'd quintupled profits, expanded into international markets, made investors wealthy and earned their unwavering loyalty. He'd bought his parents the house they'd always dreamed of, set up trusts for his younger siblings, donated millions to medical research. By every measurable standard, he was a success. So why did he wake up most mornings feeling like something essential was missing from his life? His phone buzzed again, his assistant with his schedule for the day. Board meeting at 9 kr, lunch with potential investors at noon, conference call with the London office at 3 kr, charity gala tonight at 7 kr. The same type of day he'd had hundreds of times before, efficient and productive, and completely devoid of any real human connection. Ethan made a decision. He texted his assistant, "Cancel the morning meeting. Tell them I'm doing field research. I'll be back by lunch." The response came quickly. Field research on what? How our products actually reach consumers. I'm visiting some local pharmacies. Do you want me to arrange official visits with management? No, I want to see normal operations, no announcements. There was a pause, then, "Understood. Should I send security with you?" "I'll be fine, just a guy buying aspirin." Except Ethan wasn't just a guy, and he knew it. He was the CEO of a company whose products were in medicine cabinets across the country, whose pricing decisions affected millions of people, whose quarterly earnings calls moved stock markets. But he'd been so removed from the actual human experience of healthcare, the real people struggling to afford the medications his company produced, that it had all become abstract, just numbers on spreadsheets and graphs showing upward trends. His mother had called him 2 weeks ago, her voice gentle but pointed. "Ethan, sweetheart, I'm proud of everything you've built, but when's the last time you remembered why your father started this company? It wasn't to make billions. It was to help people who couldn't afford the medications they needed. Don't forget that." The conversation had haunted him since. His father had died 5 years ago, cancer taking him despite the best treatments money could buy. A bitter irony that wasn't lost on anyone. In his final weeks, delirious from pain medication, he'd gripped Ethan's hand and whispered, "Promise me you'll remember the people, not just the profits. The people." Ethan had promised, but somewhere along the way, in the rush of expansion and acquisition and market domination, he'd let that promise slip away from daily consciousness. The people had become demographics, market segments, consumer data points. Time to remember what real people looked like. Mitchell's Pharmacy sat on a quiet street corner in a part of town Ethan rarely visited. Not poor exactly, but working class, where people counted pennies and comparison shopped and made hard choices about priorities. The kind of neighborhood his father had grown up in, the kind of people the company was supposedly serving. Ethan parked his car, he'd driven himself, leaving the driver behind wanting to be as anonymous as possible, and walked into the pharmacy at 11:45 a.m. It was busier than he'd expected, a line of about 6 people waiting at the counter, all of them looking tired in the way that suggested they'd squeezed this errand into a lunch break from jobs that didn't give them much time for personal business. He joined the line, keeping his head down, trying not to draw attention. He'd dressed casually for him, no tie, just slacks and a button-down shirt under a navy blazer, but he was still aware that his clothes probably cost more than everything the other people in line were wearing combined. The woman in front of him wore scrubs with coffee stains. The man ahead of her had paint-splattered work pants. The elderly couple at the counter were counting out exact change in coins. These were his customers, Ethan realized. The people his pricing models and market strategies affected every single day. Real humans with real struggles, not just data points in a quarterly report. That's when he noticed her. She'd just entered the pharmacy, a young woman maybe in her mid-20s, wearing jeans and a diner uniform shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep tiredness that came from working too hard for too long. But it was her eyes that caught Ethan's attention. They held a specific kind of anxiety he recognized from his own childhood, back when his father was struggling to keep the business afloat, and his mother was juggling multiple jobs. The look of someone doing mental math, calculating costs, trying to figure out how to make impossible numbers work. She joined the line behind him, and Ethan noticed she was clutching a worn wallet and a piece of paper, probably a prescription. Her breathing sounded slightly labored, and she kept reaching up to touch her chest unconsciously, like she was testing how tight it felt. The line moved slowly. An elderly man at the counter was having trouble with his insurance, the pharmacist patiently explaining what was and wasn't covered, the man's wife looking more stressed with each passing minute. Eventually they worked it out, paid, and shuffled away with a bag full of medications that probably cost them more than they could easily afford. The next customer, a middle-aged woman, picked up a prescription for her son, wincing visibly when she saw the total, but handing over her credit card without comment. The woman after her had to put back one of her items because she couldn't afford everything at once, choosing between her blood pressure medication and her diabetes supplies, a choice no one should have to make. Ethan watched it all, his chest getting tighter with each transaction. This was the real impact of the pharmaceutical industry, not the profits his board celebrated, but these small tragedies playing out every day in pharmacies across the country. Then it was the young woman's turn. She stepped up to the counter with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, handing the pharmacist her prescription slip. "Hi, I called earlier about this prescription. You said it was ready." The pharmacist, an older woman with kind eyes named Helen, according to her name tag, checked the computer and pulled a bag from the shelf behind her. "Here you go, hun. The albuterol inhaler." The young woman, Lily, Ethan would learn later, nodded. "How much is it?" "Let me ring that up for you." Helen scanned the barcode, and her expression shifted to sympathy. "That'll be $32. Lily's face fell. She'd clearly been hoping for less. Is there a generic version or any kind of discount?" "I'm sorry, this is the generic. It's already the cheapest option." Helen's voice was gentle, apologetic. Ethan watched Lily open her wallet and stare at the contents. From his position in line, he could see it held 2 $5 bills. Nothing else. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked from the money to the medication and back again. "I only have $10, Lily said quietly, her voice thick with embarrassment and something that sounded like desperation. Could I get half the dose for now? Just enough to last until I get paid on Friday?" Helen shook her head sadly. "I'm sorry, hun. The medication comes sealed from the manufacturer. I can't split it into partial doses. It's the full inhaler or nothing." Lily bit her lip, clearly fighting back tears. "What if I paid 10 now and came back with the rest later? Like a payment plan?" "Company policy won't allow it. Has to be paid in full at pickup." Helen looked genuinely distressed at having to deliver these responses. "Is there anyone you could call? Family or friends who might help?" "No." The word came out flat, final. Lily closed her wallet and took a shaky breath that even Ethan could hear was labored. "Okay, I understand. I'm sorry for taking up your time." She turned to leave, her shoulders hunched in defeat, and Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. This was wrong. Fundamentally, deeply wrong. This young woman needed medication to breathe, literally needed it to perform the most basic function of staying alive, and she couldn't afford it. Not because it was actually expensive to produce. Ethan knew the manufacturing cost of that inhaler was under $3, but because of markup and profit margins and market forces and all the business justifications he'd been using for years. He'd promised his father he'd remember the people. Here was a person, and he could help her. Ethan stepped forward before he could second-guess himself. "Excuse me," he said to Helen. "I'd like to cover her medication." Both women turned to look at him. Lily's expression was confused, wary. Helen recognized him immediately. She'd seen his photo in materials from Grant Pharmaceuticals, and her eyes widened slightly. "Sir, that's very kind, but—" Lily started. "Please," Ethan interrupted gently. "Let me do this. Put it on my account." Helen recovered quickly, understanding what he wanted. "Of course, Mr.—" She caught herself before saying his name, reading his desire for discretion. "I'll process that right away." Lily looked between them, clearly overwhelmed. "I don't understand. Why would you pay for my medication? You don't even know me." Ethan met her eyes and saw beyond the exhaustion and stress to something else. Strength, dignity, resilience. This wasn't someone looking for handouts. This was someone who'd been fighting hard and losing anyway through no fault of her own. "Consider it a refund from the company that should have made it easier for you," he said, the words coming from somewhere honest and unguarded. "You shouldn't have to choose between breathing and eating. That's not right." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to thank you enough. Can I at least give you my information so I can pay you back when I get my paycheck?" "No, this isn't a loan. It's just the right thing to do." Ethan turned to Helen. "Ring up her medication. I'll take care of it." As Helen processed the transaction, Ethan watched Lily struggle with the emotions flooding across her face: relief, gratitude, embarrassment, confusion. She kept looking at him like she was trying to figure out why someone would help her without wanting something in return, and it broke his heart a little that she'd apparently lived in a world where kindness came with strings attached. "Here you go, miss," Helen said, handing Lily the bag with the inhaler. "All paid for." Lily accepted it with trembling hands. "Thank you, both of you. You have no idea what this means." "I think I do," Ethan said quietly. He pulled a business card from his wallet, not his CEO card, just a plain one with his name and email, and handed it to her. "If you ever need help navigating medication costs again, reach out. I work in the pharmaceutical industry. I might be able to point you toward resources." Lily took the card, reading it quickly. "Ethan Grant." She looked up at him. "Thank you, Mr. Grant. I won't forget this. Just Ethan is fine. And take care of yourself." She nodded, clutching the medication bag like it was precious, which to her it clearly was. Then she left the pharmacy, glancing back once with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. Gratitude mixed with something else, maybe curiosity or disbelief that this had actually happened. After she was gone, Ethan approached the counter. Helen looked at him with an expression that blended respect and concern. "That was very kind of you, Mr. Grant. But I hope you know, she's not the only one. That happens every single day. People coming in who can't afford their medications, having to make impossible choices." The words landed like stones in Ethan's stomach. "Every day?" "Multiple times a day," Helen confirmed quietly. "Insulin for diabetics, inhalers for asthmatics, heart medications, blood pressure pills. People skipping doses to make prescriptions last longer, cutting pills in half when they shouldn't, going without entirely because they can't afford both medicine and food." She paused. "I've been a pharmacist for 32 years. It's getting worse, not better." Ethan felt something fundamental shifting in his worldview. Why haven't I heard about this? Why isn't anyone talking about it? Helen gave him a sad smile. "With respect, Mr. Grant, people talk about it all the time, but maybe not in boardrooms or investor meetings. They talk about it here, at pharmacy counters. They talk about it in hospital waiting rooms and clinic lobbies. They talk about it at kitchen tables when they're trying to figure out which bills to pay and which medications they can risk going without." She pulled up something on her computer. "You want to know something that'll break your heart? We have a drawer here." She gestured to something behind the counter, full of prescriptions people never picked up. They got them filled thinking they could afford it, then saw the price and just left them. "We hold them for 2 weeks per policy. Then we have to put them back in inventory. There are probably 40 prescriptions in there right now, representing 40 people who needed medication and couldn't get it." Ethan stared at her, processing this information that shouldn't have been news but somehow was. He'd known intellectually that medication costs were an issue, had seen the statistics and the policy debates, but knowing it as data was completely different from seeing it embodied in a young woman who couldn't afford to breathe properly. "Thank you for telling me this," he said quietly. "I needed to hear it." "Are you going to do anything about it?" Helen asked, her tone not accusatory but genuinely curious. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to try." He completed his original purpose for visiting, buying some over-the-counter medication he didn't really need, and left the pharmacy feeling like he'd been fundamentally changed by 15 minutes of observation. His phone was buzzing with messages about the lunch meeting he was supposed to be at, but he couldn't bring himself to care about investor presentations and market share discussions when he'd just witnessed the human cost of the very business model he'd been celebrating. Ethan sat in his car for a long moment, staring at nothing, replaying the scene in his mind. Then he pulled out his phone and texted his assistant. "Cancel the rest of today's meetings. I need to do some research. I'll be back in the office tomorrow." The response, "Is everything all right?" "I'm not sure yet, but I think it's about to be." Lily made it back to Martha's diner with 10 minutes to spare before her afternoon shift started. She locked herself in the small employee bathroom and used the inhaler immediately, feeling her lungs expand properly for the first time in days. The relief was so intense she started crying, part gratitude, part overwhelming emotion from the entire experience. A stranger had paid for her medication. A complete stranger had seen her struggling and had helped without being asked, without wanting anything in return, without making her feel small or pathetic. In a world where Lily had learned to expect nothing from anyone, where every kindness seemed to come with conditions or expectations, this simple act of generosity felt almost surreal. She pulled out the business card he'd given her, studying it more carefully now. Ethan Grant. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place why. He'd said he worked in the pharmaceutical industry, mentioned knowing about resources for medication costs. Maybe he was a sales rep or a researcher, someone who understood the system from the inside. Lily tucked the card into her wallet, next to the $10 she'd been prepared to spend. The $10 she still had because someone had cared enough to help her. She'd find a way to thank him properly somehow. Maybe she could write him a letter, express what his kindness had meant in a way she hadn't been able to articulate. In the moment when she'd been too overwhelmed to think straight, she washed her face, fixed her ponytail, and headed out to start her shift. Her manager, Martha herself, a woman in her 60s who'd owned the diner for 30 years and had a soft spot for struggling employees, took one look at Lily and frowned with concern. "You okay, hon? You look like you've been crying." "I'm fine," Lily said, and for the first time in weeks, it was actually true. "Actually, I'm better than fine. Something really good just happened." Martha raised an eyebrow. "Good how? Did you win the lottery?" "Better. Someone reminded me that kind people still exist." She didn't elaborate, and Martha didn't push, just nodded with the wisdom of someone who'd seen enough of life to know that sometimes the smallest kindnesses meant the most. "Well, whatever happened, I'm glad you're feeling better. You've been looking run down lately. Was worried about you. I got my inhaler refilled. I can breathe properly again." "That's wonderful, Lily, really. Now get out there and charm the lunch crowd. You're my best waitress, and table 6 specifically asked for you." Lily's shift passed in a blur of orders and coffee refills and the comfortable rhythm of work she knew how to do well. Her tips were better than they'd been in weeks. Maybe her improved mood was translating to better service, or maybe the universe was just cutting her a break for once. By the time her break arrived at 2Y, she'd made almost $40 in tips, enough to actually buy some decent groceries instead of just surviving on ramen. She used her break to do what she'd been thinking about all afternoon. She Googled Ethan Grant on her phone, curious about the man who'd helped her. The search results made her drop her phone in shock. Ethan Grant wasn't just someone who worked in the pharmaceutical industry. He was the CEO of Grant Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest medication manufacturers in the country. The man who'd paid for her $32 inhaler was a billionaire who ran the company that had produced that very medication. Lily scrolled through articles with growing disbelief. His net worth was estimated in the billions. His company had just closed a deal worth hundreds of millions. He'd been featured in Forbes, interviewed on major news networks, photographed at galas with celebrities and politicians. This was someone who existed in a completely different stratosphere from people like her. And he'd stood in line at a small-town pharmacy and paid for a struggling waitress's inhaler without telling her who he was. Lily's hands were shaking as she read more. She found his company website, saw photos of their headquarters, a gleaming building that looked like something from a science fiction movie. She read about their research programs, their market share, their expansion plans. Everything about Ethan Grant's world was so far removed from hers that they might as well have lived on different planets, which made what he'd done even more remarkable. He could have ignored her struggle completely, could have stood in line without even noticing her distress, could have noticed but decided it wasn't his problem. Instead, he'd intervened quietly, helping without fanfare or expectation of recognition, giving her his card like he was just a regular person instead of someone whose company was worth more than entire towns. Lily felt the urge to thank him properly, intensifying. A simple thank you at the pharmacy hadn't been enough, not when she'd been too shocked and overwhelmed to really express what his kindness meant. She wanted him to know that he hadn't just paid for medication. He'd restored her faith in humanity a little bit, reminded her that not everyone was indifferent to other people's suffering. She pulled out her phone and started typing an email to the address on his business card, then stopped. What could she possibly say that wouldn't sound inadequate or embarrassing? "Dear Mr. Grant, thank you for paying for my inhaler," sounded pathetic, but trying to explain the full emotional impact felt too vulnerable, too revealing. Finally, she settled on something simple and honest. "Dear Ethan, I'm the woman from Mitchell's Pharmacy this afternoon. After you left, I looked you up and realized who you are, which makes what you did even more incredible. You didn't have to help me. You could have ignored my situation completely. But you chose kindness instead, and I can't express how much that meant. I want you to know that you didn't just pay for medication today. You reminded me that good people still exist, that compassion isn't dead, that sometimes strangers care when no one else does. I've been struggling for a long time, feeling invisible and overwhelmed, and your simple act of generosity made me feel seen and valued as a human being. Thank you seems inadequate, but thank you anyway, for paying attention when you could have looked away, for helping when you had no obligation to, for being kind when the world often isn't. I hope you know that what you did mattered, not just practically, but emotionally. You made a difference in my life today. With deep gratitude, Lily Carter." She read it 3 times, wavering between sending it and deleting it, before finally hitting send before she could overthink it more. He probably wouldn't even see it. Someone as important as him surely had assistants who filtered his emails, but at least she'd tried to express what his kindness had meant, and that felt important, even if he never read the words. Lily finished her break and headed back to work for her evening shift, unaware that across town, Ethan Grant was sitting in his hotel room reading her email for the 3rd time with an expression of wonder and determination forming on his face. If you've ever been helped by a stranger's kindness, or if you've helped someone else, drop a comment and share that story. And please hit that like button. It helps us share more stories like this. Ethan had spent the afternoon doing research he should have done years ago. He'd pulled up internal documents on medication pricing, manufacturing costs, profit margins. He'd compared what it actually cost to produce medications versus what they were sold for at retail. The numbers were staggering and morally indefensible when translated from abstract business data into real human impact. The albuterol inhaler he'd paid for that afternoon, the one that had cost Lily more than she had available, cost Grant Pharmaceuticals approximately $2.85 to manufacture. They sold it to wholesalers for $18. By the time it reached a pharmacy counter, it was priced at $32 or more. That was over a 1,000% markup from production to consumer, justified by research and development costs, regulatory compliance, and profit expectations. But Ethan was looking at the R&D budget for albuterol specifically, and it was minimal. The medication had been around for decades. The research was long since paid for. The markup was purely profit-driven, defended by market forces and shareholder expectations, and all the business justifications that sounded reasonable in boardrooms, but looked obscene when you watched a young woman choose between breathing and eating. He was staring at these numbers, feeling sick about what they represented, when his email pinged. The message from Lily came directly to his personal address, rather than being filtered by assistants, and reading her words hit him harder than any quarterly report ever had. "You reminded me that good people still exist." Is that what the bar had become? That paying for someone's basic medication qualified as exceptional kindness rather than baseline human decency? What kind of world had they created where accessing life-saving medication was a privilege rather than a right? Ethan read Lily's email 3 times, each reading reinforcing his sense that something fundamental needed to change. He'd been so focused on building a successful company that he'd lost sight of the company's purpose. His father had started Grant Pharmaceuticals to help people, not to maximize profits at the expense of accessibility. Somewhere along the way, priorities had gotten inverted. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant. "Rebecca, I need you to set up a meeting for first thing tomorrow morning. Development team, pricing strategy, and public relations. Tell them we're exploring a new initiative, and I need their full attention." "What kind of initiative?" Rebecca asked, her pen already poised to take notes. "Medication accessibility. I want to discuss how we can make our products more affordable for people who are currently priced out of treatment." There was a pause. "Mr. Grant, that's going to be complicated. Pricing is tied to dozens of factors, including investor expectations, and I know it's complicated. That's why we're having the meeting. But Rebecca, I saw something today that I can't unsee, and I need to know if we can do better or if the system is so broken that even trying is futile." "Understood. I'll set it up for 8 a.m. After hanging up, Ethan did something impulsive and completely out of character for someone in his position. He responded directly to Lily's email instead of having an assistant draft a polite corporate reply. "Dear Lily, your email meant more to me than you could possibly know. I didn't help you today expecting gratitude, but receiving it and understanding what that moment meant from your perspective has given me a lot to think about. I want you to know that what I witnessed at the pharmacy wasn't unique to you. The pharmacist told me it happens multiple times every day. People unable to afford medications they desperately need. That's unacceptable, and it's something I'm in a position to potentially address. I don't know yet what form that will take, but I'm committed to trying. Your situation opened my eyes to realities I should have been paying attention to all along. Would you be willing to meet with me sometime this week? Not as a thank you or an obligation, but because I think your perspective and experience could be valuable as I explore how to make real change. I'd compensate you for your time, of course, and we can meet wherever you're comfortable. If you're interested, just let me know your schedule. If not, I completely understand, and I wish you all the best. With respect, Ethan." He sent the email before second-guessing himself, then sat back wondering what he'd just started. Was this a genuine attempt at systemic change, or just guilt-driven impulse that would fade once the emotional impact of the afternoon wore off? He honestly didn't know. But he knew he had to try something, had to take the discomfort he was feeling and channel it into action, rather than just filing it away as an unfortunate reality of business. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "How was your day, sweetheart?" Ethan smiled and typed back, "I think I might have remembered why Dad started the company, and I might have met someone who's going to help me figure out what to do about it." "That's wonderfully cryptic. Care to elaborate?" "Not yet, but I'll tell you soon. Love you." "Love you too." "And Ethan, Whatever you're thinking about doing, if it's making you this introspective, it's probably the right thing. His mother always did know him better than anyone else. Lily saw Ethan's response during her break between the dinner rush and closing duties. She read it twice, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and intimidation. The CEO of a pharmaceutical company wanted to meet with her, wanted her perspective, was talking about making real change. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. But the email was sitting right there in her inbox, genuine and direct and completely surreal. She typed a response with trembling fingers. Dear Ethan, I would be honored to meet with you, though I'm not sure what valuable perspective I could offer beyond my own experience. I work double shifts most days at Martha's Diner on Oakwood Street, but I have Thursday morning free if that works for you. I can meet anywhere that's convenient. And please, you don't need to compensate me. You already paid for my medication. That's more than enough. Thank you for taking this seriously. Most people don't. Lily. The response came back within 5 minutes. Thursday morning works perfectly. How about 10 a.m. at Martha's Diner? I'd like to see where you work if that's okay with you. And I insist on compensation. Your time and insights are valuable and I don't expect you to give them for free. See you Thursday. Ethan. Lily stared at her phone in disbelief. She had a meeting scheduled with a billionaire CEO at her workplace in 3 days. Martha noticed her stunned expression when she came out of the break room. You okay, hon? You look like you've seen a ghost. Not a ghost, Lily said slowly. Just my life taking a very unexpected turn. Good unexpected or bad unexpected? I honestly have no idea. But I guess I'll find out on Thursday. Martha studied her with the shrewd eyes of someone who'd spent decades reading people. Does this have anything to do with whatever happened earlier that had you looking happier? It might, Lily admitted. Someone did something really kind for me today, and now that person wants to meet with me to talk about, I don't even know. Making things better for people like me, I think. People like you meaning what? People who work hard and still can't afford basic things like medication and rent and food. Lily's voice caught slightly. People who have to choose which necessities to go without because they can't afford everything they need. Martha's expression softened with understanding and something that looked like pride. And this person thinks you have something valuable to say about that? Apparently. Well, they're right. You do. Martha squeezed Lily's shoulder gently. You've lived it, honey. You know what it's really like in ways people with money never will. If someone's actually willing to listen, you tell them everything. Make them understand what it costs to be poor in this country. I'm nervous, Lily confessed. This person is really important and successful, and You're just someone with real experience and honest perspective. That's worth more than fancy degrees and corner offices. Martha's voice was firm. Don't sell yourself short, Lily. You're smart, you're hardworking, and you know things that people need to hear. So you hold your head up and you speak your truth, understand? Lily felt tears threatening again. Martha had been more of a mother figure to her in the 2 years since she'd moved here than she'd had since her own mother died. Thank you, Martha, for everything. For giving me a job when I desperately needed one, for being patient when I was struggling, for believing in me. Oh, honey. Martha pulled her into a quick hug. You earned everything you got here. You're one of the best waitresses I've ever had, and more importantly, you're a good person. Now get back out there and finish your shift so you can go home and get some rest. You look exhausted. Lily returned to work with renewed energy, her mind already racing with what she might say to Ethan on Thursday. She'd never thought of her struggles as valuable perspective before. They were just her life, the reality she navigated daily without considering that it might be invisible to people in different circumstances. But maybe Martha was right. Maybe her experience did matter, could teach someone something, could potentially lead to changes that would help not just her, but countless others facing similar impossible choices. The rest of her shift passed quickly. She made decent tips, enough to buy actual protein for dinner this week instead of just carbs, and left the diner at 10:15, feeling physically exhausted but emotionally lighter than she had in months. Having medication she could actually use without rationing, having enough money for groceries, and having something unexpected to look forward to. These small things felt like enormous luxuries after so long with none of them. Walking home through quiet streets, Lily thought about the strange chain of events that had led to this moment. If her asthma hadn't gotten worse, if she'd had more money, if she'd gone to a different pharmacy, if Ethan hadn't happened to be there at exactly that moment, any of these variables changing would have meant they never met. But somehow all the pieces had aligned in a way that felt almost like fate, though Lily wasn't sure she believed in such things. She let herself into her small apartment, took off her work shoes that were starting to develop holes she couldn't afford to repair yet, and collapsed onto her second-hand sofa. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi Lily, this is Ethan. I got your number from the pharmacy. Hope that's okay. I promised Helen I had good intentions. I just wanted to confirm Thursday at 10 a.m. at Martha's Diner. Looking forward to our conversation." Lily saved the number and responded, "That's fine, and yes, Thursday at 10 works perfectly. See you then." His reply came quickly. "Great. And Lily? Thank you for being willing to share your perspective. I know it's not easy to talk about personal struggles with a stranger." "You already stopped being a stranger when you helped me," she typed back. "Strangers don't do what you did." "I'd like to think most people would help if they saw someone struggling." "You'd be surprised how many people look the other way," Lily wrote, honestly. "But you didn't. That means something." She put her phone down before the conversation could continue, suddenly aware that she was texting casually with a billionaire CEO like they were equals, like the massive gulf between their circumstances didn't exist. It felt surreal and slightly dangerous, not because Ethan seemed threatening, but because getting comfortable with someone so far outside her world felt like setting herself up for inevitable disappointment when reality reasserted itself. Still, as Lily got ready for bed that night, using her new inhaler without anxiety for the first time in weeks, she couldn't help feeling a small spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, something good was beginning. Something that went beyond just one act of kindness and pointed toward larger possibilities she'd long since stopped letting herself imagine. She fell asleep thinking about Thursday, about what she might say, about the strange and unexpected ways life sometimes shifted when you least expected it. Ethan spent the next 2 days in meetings that felt different than any he'd had before. Usually board meetings and strategy sessions energized him. The challenge of solving complex problems, the satisfaction of making decisions that moved the company forward. But now, every discussion about profit margins and market positioning felt hollow when filtered through the lens of what he'd witnessed at Mitchell's pharmacy. His executive team was confused by his sudden interest in accessibility programs. "We already have patient assistance programs," his CFO pointed out during their Wednesday afternoon meeting. "We help people who qualify based on income thresholds." "And how many people actually use those programs?" Ethan asked. The CFO consulted his notes. "Last year, approximately 3,200 people across all our medications." "Out of how many total patients using our products?" A pause. "Approximately 4.2 million. So less than 0.1% of our customers are accessing the assistance we offer. Why is that number so low?" His head of public relations cleared her throat. "The application process is fairly rigorous. We need to verify income, employment status, insurance coverage. It's designed to prevent fraud. Or it's designed to be so cumbersome that people don't bother applying," Ethan said bluntly. "How long does the application process take? 4 to 6 weeks for approval. And what are people supposed to do during those 6 weeks while they're waiting? Go without medication?" Silence around the table. Finally, his VP of Operations spoke up. "Mr. Grant, with respect, we can't just give away medication to everyone who claims they can't afford it. We have fiduciary responsibilities to shareholders, research costs to recoup, operational expenses to cover." "I understand all of that," Ethan said, keeping his voice level despite his frustration. "But I also understand that we're pricing people out of treatment. I saw it myself. A young woman who needed an inhaler, our inhaler, manufactured by this company, and couldn't afford the $32 it cost at retail. She was literally choosing between breathing and eating. "That's unfortunate," his CFO said carefully. "But individual cases can't drive corporate policy. We have to look at the larger picture." "The larger picture is made up of individual cases," Ethan countered. "Thousands of them, millions of them. People making impossible choices every single day because of pricing structures we've created and defended." He leaned forward. "I want proposals on my desk by Monday. Ways we can improve accessibility without destroying profitability. Streamlined assistance programs, tiered pricing based on income, partnerships with non-profits. I don't care what form it takes, but I want real solutions, not just PR talking points." His team exchanged glances that clearly said they thought he was having some kind of crisis. Maybe he was, but it felt like waking up rather than breaking down. "One more thing," Ethan added. "I'm meeting tomorrow with someone who's experienced these barriers firsthand. She's going to consult with us on what actually works versus what just looks good on paper. I expect everyone to treat her insights with respect, regardless of her background or credentials. Understood?" Nods around the table, some more reluctant than others. After the meeting, his VP of operations caught up with him in the hallway. "Ethan, can I speak candidly?" "Always." "Are you sure about this? The board isn't going to be happy if we start cutting into profit margins for social programs. And if this is about one person you met at a pharmacy, it's not about one person, Richard. It's about what that one person represents. Thousands of people struggling to access medications we produce. And yes, I'm sure. My father didn't build this company to maximize shareholder returns. He built it to help people. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that." Richard was quiet for a moment. "Your father also nearly bankrupted the company 3 times trying to help people. You're the one who made it profitable and sustainable, by prioritizing profit over people. Maybe it's time to find a better balance." "Just be careful. Idealism is admirable, but this is still a business." "I know, but businesses can serve purposes beyond just making money. They should serve purposes beyond just making money." After Richard left, Ethan stood alone in the hallway of his corporate headquarters, glass and steel and expensive art on the walls, and wondered if he was being naive. Maybe his team was right. Maybe individual compassion couldn't scale to corporate policy. Maybe the system was too entrenched, too complex, too dependent on the very structures he was questioning. But then he thought about Lily's face at the pharmacy, the resignation and defeat in her posture, the way she'd asked if she could buy half a dose like she was used to having to make partial solutions work. He thought about Helen, the pharmacist, mentioning a drawer full of abandoned prescriptions. He thought about his father's deathbed words about remembering the people. If he didn't try to change something, who would? Thursday morning arrived with rain pattering against windows and Lily waking up 30 minutes before her alarm in a state of nervous anticipation. She'd spent Tuesday and Wednesday's free hours thinking about what to say to Ethan, mentally rehearsing explanations of what it was like to live paycheck to paycheck, to make constant calculations about priorities and trade-offs, to feel like you were one emergency away from complete financial collapse. She dressed carefully in her best jeans and a simple sweater, not her work uniform since they were meeting during her morning off, but nothing fancy, because she didn't own anything fancy. She spent longer than usual on her hair and makeup, wanting to look put together without trying too hard, then felt ridiculous for caring what a billionaire thought of her appearance. By 9:45, she was sitting at a back booth at Martha's Diner, having arrived early because being late felt unthinkable. She'd told Martha about the meeting, not all the details, but enough that her boss understood this was important, and Martha had promised to give them privacy and make sure they had good coffee and the best table. At exactly 10 p.m., Ethan walked through the diner door, and Lily's breath caught slightly. He looked different than he had at the pharmacy, more casual in dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. No blazer, no obvious markers of wealth, except maybe the watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her car. He spotted her immediately and smiled, and Lily felt some of her nervousness ease at how genuinely pleased he looked to see her. "Lily, thank you for meeting me," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. And thank you for suggesting this place. I've never been here before, but it seems great." "It's nothing fancy," Lily said, immediately hating how apologetic she sounded. "Just a local diner." "Fancy is overrated. I eat at expensive restaurants constantly, and the food usually isn't as good as it looks." He glanced at the menu. "What do you recommend?" "The blueberry pancakes are amazing, and Martha makes the best coffee in town." As if on cue, Martha appeared with a coffee pot and 2 mugs. "Morning, folks. What can I get you?" They both ordered pancakes, and after Martha left and slightly awkward silence settled over the table, Ethan broke it first. "I appreciate you being willing to talk with me. I know this must feel strange." "It definitely feels strange," Lily admitted. "I'm still not entirely sure why you want my perspective. I'm just one person dealing with stuff a lot of people deal with." "That's exactly why I want your perspective. You have direct experience with the barriers my company creates. Barriers I didn't fully understand until I saw them through your eyes." He paused. "Can I ask you some questions? And please be completely honest, even if you think the answers might be uncomfortable for me to hear." "Okay," Lily said slowly. "When you walked into that pharmacy on Tuesday, what were you feeling?" The question was more direct and personal than Lily expected. She took a sip of coffee, organizing her thoughts. "Honestly, I was terrified. My asthma had been getting worse for weeks, and I'd been rationing my old inhaler trying to make it last. I knew I needed a refill, but I also knew I probably couldn't afford it." She met his eyes. "I'd already done the math a dozen times that morning. I had $10, rent was paid. I had groceries for the week, not good groceries, just cheap calories to keep me going. My next paycheck wasn't coming for 5 days, so that $10 was literally all I had in the world." Ethan's expression was intent, absorbing every word. "What did you plan to do if the medication cost more than $10? "I didn't really have a plan. I guess I hoped it would somehow be cheaper, or maybe they'd have a generic I could afford, or—" She trailed off. "Or I'd just go without and hope my asthma didn't get bad enough to send me to the emergency room, which would cost way more than I could ever afford." "Have you had to make choices like that before, between medication and other necessities?" "All the time," Lily said quietly. "Not just medication, everything. Do I fix my car, or do I pay my electric bill? Do I go to the doctor for this pain, or do I just hope it goes away on its own? Do I buy vegetables, or do I buy ramen because ramen is cheaper?" She saw something shift in Ethan's expression, not pity, exactly, but deep understanding. "That's what being poor means. It's not just not having money, it's making constant impossible calculations about what you can afford to do without. And when I paid for your medication, what did you think?" Lily considered this. "Honestly? At first I thought there must be a mistake. Then I thought maybe you wanted something from me. Not anything bad necessarily, but like you were trying to impress me or prove something. It wasn't until later, after I looked you up and realized who you are, that I understood you genuinely just wanted to help. Why did that make a difference? Knowing who I am? Because someone with your resources doing something kind means more than someone doing it expecting something back. You don't need anything from me. You helped purely because you could, because you saw someone struggling and decided to do something about it." Her voice caught slightly. "Do you know how rare that is? How many people see someone struggling and just look away because it's not their problem?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, and Lily worried she'd said too much, been too honest. But when he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I've been that person, looking away, telling myself other people's struggles weren't my responsibility, that I'd worked hard for my success, and what I did with it was my choice." He met her eyes. "But you're right. When you have resources, and you see suffering you could alleviate, choosing not to help is a choice. An active choice. And I'm done making that choice." Martha arrived with their pancakes, stacks of fluffy blueberry perfection that made Ethan smile genuinely for the first time that morning. "These look incredible." "Best in town," Martha confirmed with pride. "You two need anything else, just holler." After she left, Ethan took a bite and his eyes widened. "Okay, you weren't exaggerating. These are amazing." Lily smiled, feeling some of the tension ease. For a few minutes, they just ate, the conversation pausing in that comfortable way that suggested they were both processing the depth of what had already been shared. Finally, Ethan set down his fork and pulled out a tablet from the bag he'd brought. "I want to show you something," he said, pulling up a document. "This is our current patient assistance program. Can you look at it and tell me honestly what you think?" Lily took the tablet, scanning the application form. It was 8 pages long, requiring detailed financial information, including tax returns, pay stubs, bank statements, proof of insurance denial, and a letter from a physician justifying medical necessity. "This is a lot." "What do you mean?" "I mean, if I needed help affording medication, I'd take one look at this application and give up immediately." She scrolled through the pages. "You need 3 months of pay stubs. What about people who just started a new job or work under the table? You need tax returns from the previous year. What about people who didn't file because they didn't make enough to owe taxes? You need a physician's letter, but going to a doctor costs money that people who need medication assistance probably don't have." Ethan leaned forward, absorbing this. "So the people who most need help are the ones least likely to be able to complete the application." "Exactly. And even if they manage to gather all this paperwork, you said it takes 4 to 6 weeks for approval. That's over a month. What are people supposed to do while they're waiting? Just go without their medication?" "We never thought about it that way," Ethan admitted. "The process was designed to prevent fraud." "I get that. But by making it so complicated, you're also preventing the people who genuinely need help from accessing it." Lily handed back the tablet. "If I'd known about this program when I needed my inhaler, I wouldn't have applied. It would have felt impossible." "What would have worked better?" Lily thought about it. "Something simpler. Maybe just proof of income, a single pay stub, or a letter from an employer. Maybe a pharmacist verification that you actually need the medication, and faster processing, like within a week, not 6 weeks. People who can't afford medication can't wait a month and a half for help." Ethan was taking notes on his tablet. "This is exactly the kind of insight I need. My team designs these programs from a corporate perspective, focused on liability and fraud prevention. But you're seeing it from the user perspective, what actually works for real people in real situations." "I'm just telling you what it's like," Lily said. "I don't know if my experience is typical." "It is. I've been doing research this week, and what you're describing matches what I'm finding everywhere. People who need assistance can't access it because the barriers are too high." He set down his tablet. "Lily, I have a proposal for you, and I want you to really think about it before answering." "Okay." "I'd like to hire you as a consultant for Grant Pharmaceuticals, specifically to work with our team on redesigning our accessibility programs from the ground up. You'd help us understand what real barriers exist, what solutions would actually work, how to make our medications available to people who need them, regardless of their ability to pay." Lily stared at him. "You want to hire me to work for your company?" "With my company, not for. You'd be an independent consultant with your own contract." He named a monthly rate that made Lily's eyes widen. It was more than she currently made in 3 months at the diner. "And before you say it's too much, that's the standard rate we pay consultants. Your perspective and experience are valuable, and I want to compensate you fairly." "I don't have any credentials," Lily said, her mind reeling. "I didn't go to college. I don't have business experience. I'm just a waitress who happens to be poor. You have the most important credential, lived experience. You know what it's actually like to face the barriers we're trying to address. My executives all have MBAs and years of corporate experience, but none of them have stood in a pharmacy counting their last $10 and hoping it would be enough." He paused. "I'm not asking you to pretend to be something you're not. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are and help us understand what we're missing." Lily's heart was racing. This felt surreal, impossible, too good to be true. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need. But Lily, I want you to know, this isn't charity. This isn't me trying to help you financially. This is a genuine job offer, because I believe you can contribute something my company desperately needs." Which is what? Truth. Perspective. The ability to call us out when we're designing programs that look good on paper, but don't actually help people. He smiled slightly. "And the courage to tell a billionaire CEO when he's wrong." Despite her nervousness, Lily laughed. "I'm not sure I have that kind of courage. You already did it when you told me the application process was too complicated. You were honest even though you could have just been polite and agreeable." Ethan's expression was earnest. "That's exactly what I need. Someone who will prioritize truth over politeness." Martha appeared to refill their coffee, and Lily used the interruption to gather her thoughts. This was an opportunity she'd never imagined, a chance to not just improve her own financial situation, but potentially help countless other people facing the same struggles. But it was also terrifying, entering a world she knew nothing about, working with people who had degrees and experience she didn't, risking embarrassment and failure. "What would it actually involve?" she asked after Martha left. "Like day to day?" "Initially, a lot of meetings with my team, reviewing our current programs and policies, explaining where the barriers are, helping us redesign processes. Eventually, maybe traveling to other pharmacies and clinics to see how our products are actually reaching people. And throughout, providing honest feedback about what's working and what isn't." "Would I have to quit my job at the diner?" "Not necessarily. We could structure the consulting work around your schedule, maybe a few hours a week to start, increasing if you're comfortable and if it makes sense. The goal isn't to disrupt your life, just to add this component to it." Lily looked around the diner, the familiar booths, the regulars she'd served hundreds of times, Martha behind the counter watching them with curious but approving eyes. This place had been her refuge for 2 years, the stable thing in an unstable life. Leaving it entirely felt scary, but maybe she didn't have to leave it. Maybe she could do both. "Can I give you an answer by Monday?" she asked. "Absolutely. And Lily, whatever you decide, I want you to know, you've already helped me more than you realize. Just talking to you, understanding what you've experienced, it's changed how I see everything my company does." They finished breakfast, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. Martha's history of the diner, the small town's quirks, Ethan's surprisingly normal childhood before his company took off. Lily found herself relaxing, discovering that Ethan was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in her life and perspectives, without being condescending or performatively curious. When they were done, Ethan insisted on paying and leaving a generous tip that made Martha's eyebrows rise appreciatively. Outside, as they stood by his car, a nice but not ostentatious sedan, nothing like the luxury vehicle Lily had expected, he turned to her with an expression that was hard to read. "Thank you again for meeting with me, and for being so honest. I know it's not easy to share difficult parts of your life with someone you barely know." "You stopped being a stranger when you helped me," Lily said, echoing what she'd texted him. "And honestly, it felt good to talk about it. I spend so much time pretending everything's fine, acting like I'm not struggling, putting on a smile for customers, even when I'm one unexpected expense away from disaster. It's exhausting. Being able to just tell the truth for once was kind of freeing." Ethan nodded with understanding. "I know what you mean. I spend most of my time in meetings where everyone's performing, saying what they think they're supposed to say rather than what they actually think. It's refreshing to have a conversation that's just genuine." They stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to leave, until Lily's phone buzzed with a reminder about an errand she needed to run. "I should go, but thank you for breakfast, and for the job offer. I'll think about it seriously and let you know." "That's all I ask." He hesitated, then added, "And Lily, whatever you decide about the consulting work, I hope we can stay in touch. I don't have many people in my life who are willing to be this honest with me." "I don't have many people in my life who actually want to hear it," Lily countered with a small smile. "So yeah, I'd like that." Over the next 3 days, Lily couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's offer. She discussed it with Martha, who was enthusiastically supportive. "You'd be a fool to turn this down, honey. This is a chance to make real money and maybe help other people like yourself. Why would you say no?" "Because I'm scared," Lily admitted. "What if I'm not smart enough? What if I say something stupid in a meeting and embarrass myself? What if they all realize I don't belong there? Or what if you're exactly what they need and you do amazing work?" Martha countered. "You spend so much time focusing on what could go wrong that you never let yourself imagine what could go right." Lily knew she was right. She'd spent so long in survival mode just trying to get through each day that the concept of actually thriving felt foreign and dangerous. But maybe it was time to take a risk on something beyond just surviving. On Sunday evening, she sent Ethan an email. "I've thought about your offer, and my answer is yes. I'm terrified and have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to try. When do we start?" His response came within minutes. "Tomorrow, if you're free, come to my office at 2 p.m. and I'll introduce you to the team. And Lily? Being scared means you're taking this seriously. That's a good thing." The next afternoon, Lily stood outside the gleaming glass headquarters of Grant Pharmaceuticals, her stomach churning with nerves. The building was intimidating. All modern architecture and expensive landscaping, the kind of place where she imagined everyone wore expensive suits and spoke in corporate jargon she wouldn't understand. She'd dressed in her best outfit, a simple dress she'd bought second-hand for a funeral 2 years ago, and felt painfully aware that she didn't belong here. But she'd promised to try. So she walked through the front doors, gave her name to the receptionist, and tried not to visibly panic when she was directed to the executive floor. Ethan met her at the elevator, and his warm smile immediately eased some of her anxiety. "Lily, I'm so glad you're here. Come on, I'll show you around before we meet with the team." He gave her a tour of the office. Conference rooms with views of the city, break rooms that looked nicer than her entire apartment, workspaces filled with people who all seemed busy and important. Throughout, he introduced her simply as Lily Carter, our new accessibility consultant, without mentioning how they'd met or her background. She appreciated his discretion. Finally, they entered a large conference room where 5 people were already seated around a table. Ethan made introductions. "Everyone, this is Lily Carter. Lily, this is Rebecca Chen, my assistant. David Martinez, VP of Operations. Sarah Thompson, CFO. James Park, Head of Public Relations. And Dr. Linda Hayes, who leads our Patient Programs Division." They all greeted her politely, though Lily noticed varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism in their expressions. She took the seat Ethan indicated, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "Lily has agreed to consult with us on redesigning our patient assistance programs," Ethan began. "She brings a perspective we've been missing, direct experience as someone who's faced barriers accessing our medications." "What's your background, Ms. Carter?" Sarah asked, her tone professionally neutral, but with an edge that suggested she was already judging. "I don't have a traditional background," Lily said honestly. "I work as a waitress. I don't have a college degree. What I do have is experience being unable to afford medication I needed, and understanding firsthand what barriers exist for people like me." "And you think that qualifies you to advise a pharmaceutical company on policy?" Sarah's skepticism was barely concealed. Before Lily could respond, Ethan intervened. "What qualifies her is that she's lived the reality we're trying to address. All of us in this room have degrees and experience, but none of us have stood in a pharmacy unable to afford necessary medication. Lily has. That perspective is invaluable." Dr. Hayes, an older woman with kind eyes, spoke up. "I think what Sarah's asking is what specific insights you can offer beyond your personal experience." Lily took a breath, remembering Martha's advice to speak her truth confidently. "I can tell you why your current assistance program doesn't work. I can explain why the application process is so complicated that the people who most need help can't access it. I can help you understand what it's actually like to make the impossible choices your pricing creates. Choosing between medication and food, between treatment and rent, between breathing and eating." She pulled out her phone and opened the photo she'd taken of Grant Pharmaceuticals' assistance application. "This is your current application. 8 pages. Requires 3 months of pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements, insurance denial letters, and a physician's verification. Do you know what happens when someone who's working 2 minimum wage jobs and barely surviving sees this?" "They fill it out if they need help," Sarah said. "They give up," Lily corrected. "Because they don't have 3 months of pay stubs, because they just started their job, because they didn't file taxes, because they didn't make enough, because they can't afford to go to a doctor to get a verification letter. Your application is designed to prevent fraud, but it's so rigorous that it prevents the people who genuinely need help from accessing it." The room was silent. Finally, David spoke up. What would you suggest instead? Something simpler. Single pay stub or employer letter proving income below a certain threshold. Pharmacist verification that the medication is necessary. Processing within a week, not 6 weeks. Maybe even partnership with pharmacies to provide assistance at point of sale, rather than making people wait months. That opens us up to significantly more fraud risk, Sarah objected. Maybe, Lily acknowledged, but right now your fraud prevention is so tight that you're barely helping anyone. Last year, you assisted 3,200 people out of 4.2 million using your products. That's less than 0.1%. Either almost everyone can afford your medications, which I can tell you isn't true, or your assistance is inaccessible to the people who need it. James, the PR head, was taking notes rapidly. This is good. These are the kinds of real-world insights that could shape a genuinely effective program. With respect, Sarah interjected, insights from one person's experience don't constitute a comprehensive policy foundation. Ms. Carter's situation, while unfortunate, may not be representative. Actually, it is, Dr. Hayes said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. I've been running our patient programs for 6 years, and I've seen the data. Lily's experience matches what we hear from the few people who do contact us for help. The barriers are too high, the process is too slow, and by the time we can assist, people have often already found other solutions or gone without treatment entirely. She looked at Lily with something like respect. I've been saying for years that we need ground-level perspective to improve these programs. I'm glad someone's finally listening. The meeting continued for another hour, with Lily sharing more observations about barriers she'd experienced or witnessed. Some of the team was receptive, Dr. Hayes and James especially, while Sarah remained skeptical and David seemed neutral. But by the end, even Sarah had grudgingly acknowledged that some of Lily's suggestions had merit. After everyone else left, Ethan walked Lily out. You were incredible in there, especially standing up to Sarah's skepticism. I was terrified the whole time, Lily admitted, but then I remembered what Martha said, that I know things they need to hear. So I just told the truth. That's exactly what I need you to keep doing. He handed her a folder. This is your contract. Standard consulting agreement, payment terms, confidentiality clauses. Have someone look it over if you want. I can recommend a lawyer if you don't have one, and send it back when you're comfortable. Lily took the folder, her hands trembling slightly. This was real, this was actually happening. Thank you, Ethan, for this opportunity, for believing I have something valuable to contribute. Thank you for being willing to try, he replied. And Lily, don't let Sarah's skepticism get to you. She questions everything. It's her job as CFO. But I saw her taking notes during your suggestions. You're getting through, even to the skeptics. Over the next 6 weeks, Lily's life transformed in ways she'd never imagined possible. She continued working at the diner, partly because she genuinely enjoyed it and wasn't ready to leave Martha and the regulars, partly because having that stable income felt safer than relying entirely on consulting work that still felt too good to be true. But 3 afternoons a week, she'd drive to Grant Pharmaceuticals headquarters and spend hours in meetings with various teams, reviewing policies, sharing perspectives, and helping redesign the accessibility programs from the ground up. The work was challenging and often intimidating. She was constantly surrounded by people with advanced degrees and decades of experience, discussing concepts and using terminology she had to frantically Google on her phone. But she discovered something surprising. Her lack of formal training was actually an asset. While the executives thought in terms of systems and processes, Lily thought in terms of real people facing real problems. When they designed solutions that looked elegant on paper but would fail in practice, she could explain exactly why and suggest alternatives that might actually work. Dr. Linda Hayes became an unexpected ally and mentor. After their second meeting, she'd pulled Lily aside and said, I've been trying to get this company to listen to patient perspectives for years. Having you here validates everything I've been saying. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. Lily also spent time with Ethan outside of work meetings. It started innocently. He'd suggest coffee after a particularly long session, or they'd grab lunch to discuss a program detail. But gradually, these professional conversations drifted into more personal territory. Ethan shared about the pressure of running a company, the loneliness of success, the guilt he felt about having so much when others struggled. Lily talked about her mother's death, the decision to move to this town to rebuild her life, the constant anxiety of financial precarity. They discovered they both loved old movies, preferred quiet evenings to crowded parties, and had similar senses of humor that caught each other off guard with unexpected laughter. Lily found herself looking forward to their meetings, not just for the work, but for the conversation, for the way Ethan listened like her words actually mattered, for the moments when his professional demeanor slipped and she glimpsed the real person underneath. She tried not to read too much into it. He was her employer, technically, and she was acutely aware of the power imbalance between them. But there were moments when their hands brushed, reaching for the same document, when he smiled at something she said with genuine warmth, when he remembered small details about her life she'd mentioned weeks ago. That made her wonder if maybe he felt the connection too. Martha noticed the change in Lily immediately. "You're different," she observed one morning before Lily's shift. "Happier, more confident. This consulting work is good for you." "It is," Lily agreed. "I feel like I'm actually doing something meaningful, like my struggles weren't just pointless suffering, but experiences that can help other people. And it doesn't hurt that you get to spend time with a handsome billionaire who clearly thinks you're remarkable," Martha added with a knowing smile. Lily felt her face flush. "It's not like that. It's purely professional." "Uh-huh. And I'm the Queen of England." Martha patted her hand. "Honey, I've been watching people for 60 years. That man looks at you like you hung the moon, and you light up whenever he's mentioned. Maybe it started professional, but it's becoming something more." "Even if that were true, which I'm not saying it is, nothing could happen," Lily said quietly. "He's a billionaire CEO. I'm a waitress he's helping. The power dynamic alone makes anything romantic completely inappropriate." "Or," Martha countered, "he's a lonely man who's finally found someone genuine in a world full of people who want things from him. And you're a woman who's finally being seen and valued for who you are. Power dynamics matter, sure, but so does genuine connection. Just don't close yourself off to possibilities because you think you're not good enough. You are. Have you ever had someone believe in you when you didn't believe in yourself? Share your story in the comments, and if this is touching your heart, please hit that subscribe button. 2 months into her consulting work, Lily was invited to present the redesigned assistance program to Grant Pharmaceuticals' full board of directors. The presentation was scheduled for a Friday afternoon, and Lily spent the entire previous week preparing with Dr. Hayes and James from PR, who both wanted the program to succeed. "You'll do great," Dr. Hayes assured her the morning of the presentation. "Just speak from the heart like you always do. The data supports your recommendations. You just need to help them understand why this matters." Lily wore the one professional outfit she'd bought specifically for this job, a simple navy suit that had consumed half her first consulting paycheck but made her feel more confident. She arrived at headquarters an hour early, reviewing her notes obsessively, trying not to panic about speaking in front of some of the wealthiest, most powerful people in the pharmaceutical industry. Ethan found her in the conference room at 1:45, looking pale and anxious. "Hey, you're going to be amazing." "What if I'm not? What if they think this whole thing is ridiculous? What if they—" "Lily." He sat down beside her. "You're not just presenting a program, you're telling them why it matters. You're giving them names and faces and real stories to attach to the abstract concept of patient assistance. That's powerful. Trust yourself." At Tusai, the board members filed in. 12 people in expensive suits, most of them older, all of them radiating the kind of confidence that came from decades of success. Sarah was there, along with David and other executives Lily had worked with. Ethan sat at the head of the table, and he gave her an encouraging nod as she stood to begin. "Good afternoon. My name is Lily Carter, and 2 months ago, I stood in Mitchell's pharmacy, unable to afford a $32 inhaler. I had $10 to my name, asthma that made it hard to breathe, and no idea how I was going to pay for medication I desperately needed." She paused, letting the reality of that moment sink in. What I'm here to tell you today is that my experience isn't unique. It's happening every single day at pharmacies across this country to people using medications produced by this company. For the next 30 minutes, Lily walked them through the redesigned assistance program. She explained current barriers, the 8-page application, the 6-week waiting period, the requirements that excluded the people most in need. She showed data on how few people were actually accessing help. Then she presented the new program, simplified application requiring just proof of income and pharmacist verification, processing within 1 week, partnerships with major pharmacy chains to provide assistance at point of sale. This program isn't just about being charitable, Lily explained. It's about recognizing that your business model only works if people can actually access your products. Right now, you're losing customers because they literally cannot afford to fill prescriptions. This program keeps them in treatment, improves health outcomes, and builds loyalty to your brand. She shared stories, not just her own, but ones she'd collected from people at the pharmacy, online forums, patient advocacy groups. Real people with names and faces, making impossible choices because of pricing structures that prioritized profit over access. I know some of you are worried about costs, Lily said, addressing Sarah directly. About fraud, about setting precedents, about shareholder reactions, but consider the cost of not doing this, the people who go without treatment, who end up in emergency rooms with preventable complications, who lose faith in the pharmaceutical industry entirely. This program is an investment in the people who keep your company running. Without patients, you have no business. When she finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Then one of the older board members, a man Ethan had introduced as Robert Chen, who'd been with the company since Ethan's father founded it, spoke up. Ms. Carter, that was one of the most compelling presentations I've seen in 40 years in this industry. You've taken abstract policy discussions and made them human, made them real. Thank you. Others nodded in agreement. Even Sarah looked grudgingly impressed. The board discussed, debated, raised concerns that Dr. Hayes and James helped address. But ultimately, after an hour of deliberation, they voted to approve the pilot program with a budget that made Lily's head spin. After the board members left, Ethan found Lily standing by the window, still processing what had just happened. You did it. They approved the full program. We did it, Lily corrected. I just told stories. You and Dr. Hayes and the team did all the actual work. Stories matter, Lily. Data is important, but stories make people care. You made them see the human impact of their decisions. That's what changed their minds. He was standing very close now, close enough that Lily could smell his cologne, see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for giving me this chance. A few months ago, I was counting my last $10 and hoping it would be enough for medication. Now I'm helping design programs that might help thousands of people in the same situation. That's because you saw something in me I didn't see in myself. I saw what was already there, Ethan said softly. You just needed the opportunity to show it. They stood there, the moment stretching between them, charged with something neither had acknowledged aloud, but both clearly felt. Lily was intensely aware of how close he was, how easy it would be to close the remaining distance, how much she wanted to. But before either could act on the tension, Sarah appeared in the doorway. Ethan, the legal team needs sign-off on the implementation timeline. Do you have a minute? The spell broke. Ethan stepped back, professional mask sliding back into place. Of course. Lily, we'll talk later. Sure, later. As he left with Sarah, Lily exhaled shakily. What had almost happened there? And more importantly, what did she want to happen? That evening, Lily met Martha for dinner at a small Italian restaurant, needing to talk to someone about the confusing tangle of emotions she was feeling. Over pasta and wine, she explained everything: the presentation, the board approval, the moment with Ethan that had felt like it might become something more. So let me get this straight, Martha said after Lily finished. You presented to a board of billionaires, convinced them to approve a major program, and then almost kissed your boss. I didn't almost kiss him, Lily protested weakly. It was just a moment, probably nothing. Honey, I've seen nothing. This isn't nothing. Martha refilled Lily's wine glass. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What can I do? He's my employer, technically. There's a massive power imbalance. Even if I wanted something to happen, which I'm not saying I do, it would be completely inappropriate. Is he still your employer, though? I thought you were an independent consultant. I am, but nothing. You're not his employee. You're a contractor he hired for your expertise, and you've more than proven your value. The power dynamic exists, sure, but it's not like he can fire you for rejecting him. You can walk away any time. Martha leaned forward. The real question isn't whether it's appropriate, it's whether you want it. Lily stared into her wine glass. I don't know what I want. Ethan is brilliant and kind, and he makes me feel seen in ways I've never experienced. But he's also a billionaire who lives in a completely different world. Even if something did happen between us, how would that even work? I'd always be the poor waitress he's helping. People would always assume I'm with him for money. Or, Martha said gently, you'd be two people who connected despite different circumstances, who see each other for who you really are, who built something genuine in a world that often values superficiality. Yes, people will talk. People always talk. But do you really want to let fear of judgment prevent you from pursuing something that might be extraordinary? What if I'm misreading everything? What if he's just being kind and I'm projecting feelings that aren't there? Martha laughed. Lily, I've seen the way that man looks at you when you're not paying attention. He's not just being kind. He's falling for you, probably as confused about it as you are. The question is whether you're brave enough to acknowledge what's happening and see where it leads. Lily went home that night with Martha's words echoing in her mind. Was she brave enough? She'd been brave in that pharmacy when she'd asked for partial doses rather than going without entirely. She'd been brave accepting Ethan's job offer despite feeling completely unqualified. She'd been brave presenting to the board despite her terror. Maybe it was time to be brave about this too. The next Monday, Lily arrived at Grant Pharmaceuticals for what was supposed to be a routine check-in meeting with Dr. Hayes. But when she got to the conference room, she found Ethan there instead, looking troubled. Hey, where's Dr. Hayes? She had an emergency meeting. I told her I'd cover this. He gestured to the chair across from him. But actually, I'm glad it's just us. I need to talk to you about something. Lily's stomach tightened with anxiety. Okay. Ethan took a breath, and she could see him choosing his words carefully. Over the past 2 months, working with you has been one of the best professional experiences I've had. You've challenged me, taught me things I desperately needed to learn, and helped create something that's going to genuinely help people. I'm grateful for all of that. I hear a but coming, Lily said quietly. Not a but, a complication. He met her eyes. Somewhere along the way, this stopped being just professional for me. The coffee meetings, the conversations that drift beyond work, the way I find myself thinking about you when I should be focused on other things. Lily, I've developed feelings for you that go beyond professional respect. Lily's heart was hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. Ethan! Let me finish, please. His voice was gentle but determined. I know the timing is terrible. I know there's a power dynamic that makes this complicated. I know you might not feel the same way, and if that's the case, we can pretend I never said anything and continue working together professionally. But I needed you to know the truth. I'm falling for you, Lily, and I don't know what to do about it. The room was silent except for the sound of Lily's racing heartbeat. She had a choice to make: play it safe, protect herself, maintain professional boundaries, or take a risk on something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. I feel it too, she said quietly. I've been trying to convince myself it was just gratitude or admiration or anything other than what it actually is. But the truth is, I've been falling for you too. And it scares me because our worlds are so different and people will judge, and I have no idea how this could possibly work. Ethan's expression shifted from nervous to hopeful. But you want to try, to see if it could work. I don't know. Maybe. Lily struggled to articulate the tangle of emotions. I need to know this isn't about you saving me, that you're not confusing compassion with romantic feelings. I need to know you see me as an equal, not someone you're helping. Lily. Ethan came around the table, kneeling beside her chair so they were eye level. "You're the strongest person I've met. You've survived things that would have broken most people. You walked into my corporate world with no credentials and earned respect through sheer force of intelligence and honesty. You challenged my entire worldview and made me a better person. If anything, I'm worried you're the one who could do better than me." Lily felt tears forming. "I'm a waitress with a high school diploma who couldn't afford a $32 inhaler 2 months ago. You're a billionaire CEO. How could I possibly do better than you?" "Because worth isn't measured in bank accounts or job titles. It's measured in character, integrity, compassion, all things you have in abundance." He took her hands. "I don't want to save you, Lily. I want to build something with you, as equals, as partners. If you'll give us a chance." Lily looked at this man who'd walked into her life at her lowest moment and somehow become the most important person in it. The safe choice would be to say no, to protect herself from potential heartbreak, to maintain boundaries that kept her world simple and predictable. But safe choices had never gotten her anywhere except surviving. Maybe it was time to choose brave. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's try. Let's see where this goes." Ethan's smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. "Yeah? Yeah, but slowly and carefully. And if it gets weird or complicated, or if the power dynamic becomes a problem, we talk about it honestly. Deal? Deal." He stood, pulling her up with him. For a moment they just looked at each other, the weight of what they'd just acknowledged hanging in the air between them. Then Ethan leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, and kissed her gently. It was soft and tentative and perfect, nothing rushed or presumptuous, just two people finally acknowledging what had been building for months. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "I should probably get back to work," Lily said, though she made no move to leave. "Probably," Ethan agreed, equally still. "But first we should establish some ground rules. I don't want this to complicate your work or make you uncomfortable." They spent the next hour talking honestly about boundaries, keeping their relationship private initially, maintaining professionalism during work hours, being transparent with HR about their involvement. It was practical and slightly awkward, and exactly what they needed to feel like they were handling this responsibly. Over the next month, Lily and Ethan navigated the complicated terrain of a relationship that had started in the most unlikely way. They were careful at work, maintaining appropriate distance during meetings, saving personal conversations for after hours. But away from the office, they discovered each other with the excitement of new love, tempered by genuine friendship. Ethan took Lily to quiet restaurants where they could talk for hours, surprising her with his preference for simple places over expensive establishments. "I eat at fancy restaurants constantly for work," he explained. "When I'm with you, I just want to be normal." Lily introduced Ethan to her world, the diner regulars who'd become her chosen family, the small apartment she'd made into a home, the simple pleasures of movie nights with microwave popcorn instead of catered events with champagne. He fit into her life more easily than she'd expected, charming Martha with his genuine appreciation for her cooking and proving he could laugh at himself when the diner's karaoke night revealed his terrible singing voice. The pilot assistance program launched 6 weeks after the board approval, starting with 3 pharmacy chains in 5 cities. Within the first week, over 200 people had accessed help. Within a month, that number climbed to over 1,000. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, people crying with relief at pharmacy counters, writing letters of gratitude, sharing their stories on social media. Lily monitored every report, reading each testimonial with tears in her eyes. These were her people, the struggling, the forgotten, the ones making impossible choices. And now, they were getting help, real help, because she'd had the courage to share her truth. 3 months into their relationship, Lily and Ethan faced their first real test when a business magazine published an article about Grant Pharmaceuticals' new assistance program. The piece was largely positive, praising the company's innovation and highlighting the program's early success. But buried in the article was a single paragraph that made Lily's stomach drop. The program was developed with input from Lily Carter, a former waitress who consulted for the company after CEO Ethan Grant personally witnessed her struggle to afford medication. Sources close to the company suggest Carter and Grant are now romantically involved, raising questions about whether the multi-million-dollar program was motivated by business strategy or personal feelings. Lily read the article on her phone during her morning shift at the diner, and her hands started shaking. This was exactly what she'd feared, people reducing her work to a romantic relationship, suggesting the program existed because Ethan had feelings for her rather than because it addressed a real need. Martha noticed her distress immediately. "What's wrong, honey?" Lily showed her the article. Martha read it, her expression hardening. "That's garbage journalism. They took something good and twisted it into gossip." "But they're not entirely wrong," Lily said miserably. "Ethan and I are together. People are going to think the whole program is just him doing something nice for his girlfriend. So what if they do? The program is helping over 1,000 people right now. That's real impact, regardless of motivation." Martha squeezed her shoulder. "Don't let them make you ashamed of something beautiful, either the program or your relationship." But the article was just the beginning. By afternoon, it had spread across social media, with people offering opinions ranging from supportive to cruel. Some praised Ethan for caring enough about one person's struggle to create systemic change. Others accused Lily of manipulating a wealthy man for personal gain, called her a gold digger, suggested she'd deliberately positioned herself to attract his attention. The comments were vicious. Probably saw him at the pharmacy and faked not being able to afford medication. Classic poor girl trapping a rich man. He'll realize she's using him and dump her within 6 months. Ethan called her during her break, his voice tight with anger. "Lily, I'm so sorry. I have PR working on a statement, and I'm considering legal action against the magazine for invasion of privacy." "Don't," Lily said quietly. "That'll just make it bigger. Let it blow over. They're attacking you, calling you horrible things. I'm not going to just ignore that. Ethan, we knew this would happen eventually. People finding out, making assumptions, being cruel, we can't control what they think." Her voice wavered slightly. "But I need to know, do you regret it? The program? Us? Any of it?" "What? No, Lily, of course not. Why would you even ask that?" "Because maybe they're right. Maybe you created this program because of your feelings for me, rather than because it was the right business decision. Maybe I've compromised your company's integrity." "Stop." Ethan's voice was firm. "The program exists because it addresses a real problem that was costing us customers and damaging people's health. Yes, meeting you opened my eyes to that problem. But the solution was driven by data, by patient need, by sound business strategy. Our relationship doesn't change any of that." Lily wanted to believe him. But sitting in the diner's back room, reading comment after comment suggesting she was a manipulative opportunist, it was hard to hold on to that certainty. That evening, Ethan showed up at her apartment unannounced, carrying takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. "We need to talk about this properly, face to face." They sat on her small couch, food forgotten, and had the hard conversation they'd been avoiding. Ethan held her hands, his expression serious. "I know the public attention is difficult. I know people are being cruel. But Lily, I need you to understand something. I don't care what strangers think about us. I care what you think. I care that you believe in us." "I do believe in us," Lily said, "but I also know how this looks. Rich man helps poor woman, then starts dating her. It's a cliché that makes people skeptical. Let them be skeptical. The people who matter know the truth." He pulled out his phone, showing her an email. "This is from Dr. Hayes. She sent it this morning after the article came out." Lily read, "Ethan, ignore the noise. Lily earned her position through intelligence and insight, not manipulation. The program exists because she identified real barriers and proposed practical solutions. Anyone suggesting otherwise doesn't understand how hard she worked or how valuable her contributions were. Don't let gossip undermine something genuinely good." "And this is from Robert Chen, from the board," Ethan continued, showing her another message. "The young woman who presented to us was competent, knowledgeable, and passionate about helping others. Whether you're dating her is irrelevant to the quality of her work. Stand by her." Tears filled Lily's eyes. "They don't think I'm just using you." "No, because they've worked with you. They've seen your dedication, your expertise, your genuine commitment to making things better. The only people who think you're using me are strangers who don't know either of us." He cupped her face gently. "I love you, Lily, not because you needed help that day at the pharmacy, but because of who you are. Your strength, your compassion, your refusal to let circumstances diminish your spirit. That's not going to change because some blogger has opinions." It was the first time he'd said he loved her directly, and the words landed with the weight of complete sincerity. "I love you too," Lily whispered. "I'm just scared of messing up your life." "You've made my life infinitely better. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." 2 weeks later, the controversy had largely faded, replaced by news scandals and gossip. But something positive emerged from it. Lily received dozens of messages from people who'd seen the article and wanted to share their own stories of struggling to afford medication. They thanked her for speaking up, for using her position to create change, for proving that people from working-class backgrounds could influence corporate policy. One email particularly moved her. "I'm a single mum who couldn't afford my daughter's asthma medication. Thanks to your program, she's in treatment now. I don't care why you created it or who you're dating. You saved my daughter's life, thank you." Lily shared the email with Ethan, her voice thick with emotion. "This is why it was worth it. All the gossip, all the cruel comments, none of it matters compared to this. You're changing lives, Lily, don't ever forget that." If this story is moving you, please subscribe and share it, and drop a comment about a time someone's kindness changed your trajectory. Your story matters. 4 months into their relationship, Ethan took Lily home to meet his mother. She lived in a comfortable but not ostentatious house in the suburbs, the kind of place that spoke of earned success rather than inherited wealth. Lily was terrified. What if Ethan's mother thought she wasn't good enough, that she was with him for money, that she'd somehow trapped her son? But Eleanor Grant greeted Lily with a warm hug and knowing eyes. "So you're the young woman who reminded my son why his father started this company. I've wanted to meet you for months." Over dinner, homemade lasagna that Eleanor insisted on serving, despite Ethan's offers to cater, they talked about everything. Eleanor shared stories about Ethan's father, about the early days of the company when they'd struggled, about the values that had driven them. "My husband always said that business should serve people, not the other way around. Ethan lost sight of that for a while, got caught up in growth and profits, but you helped him remember." "I didn't do anything special," Lily protested. "I just told him what it was like." "You did more than that. You challenged him to be better, to use his success for something meaningful." Eleanor took Lily's hand. "I know people have been cruel about your relationship. I want you to know that I don't care about your background or your bank account. I care that you make my son genuinely happy for the first time in years. That's worth more than anything." Lily felt tears threatening. "Thank you. That means everything." Later, as Eleanor showed Lily family photos, she pulled out one of a young Ethan with his father at a pharmacy, delivering medication to people who couldn't pay. "This was my husband's dream, making sure everyone could access treatment regardless of their ability to pay. Ethan's been trying to honor that dream through success and profit, but you showed him how to honor it through action. That's a gift." 6 months after the program launched, Grant Pharmaceuticals announced a national expansion. What had started as a pilot in 5 cities was now available at over 5,000 pharmacies nationwide. The numbers were staggering. Over 50,000 people had accessed assistance in the first month alone, with more enrolling daily. Ethan insisted on calling the program Lily's Breath, despite her protests. "You started all of this. Your experience, your insights, your courage to speak truth to power. The program should carry your name." The announcement press conference was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Lily stood beside Ethan at the podium, her heart racing as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. Ethan handled most of the speaking, explaining the program's mechanics and the company's commitment to accessibility. But then he turned to Lily. I'd like to introduce Lily Carter, who consulted on this program's development. Lily, would you like to say a few words? Lily stepped to the microphone, her prepared remarks suddenly feeling inadequate. Instead, she spoke from the heart. 7 months ago, I stood in a pharmacy with $10, needing medication that cost $32, and I had to choose between breathing easily and eating that week. That choice shouldn't exist in a country this wealthy, in an industry this profitable. This program doesn't solve everything, but it means thousands of people won't have to make that choice anymore. That matters. That's worth celebrating. The room erupted in questions. One reporter called out, "Ms. Carter, there's been speculation about your relationship with Mr. Grant. Can you comment on whether—" "My relationship with Ethan is personal," Lily interrupted calmly. "What's professional is the work we've done to create a program that serves people in need. Can we focus on that?" After the press conference, Dr. Hayes pulled Lily aside. "That was perfectly handled, confident, professional, and you redirected them beautifully." "I'm learning," Lily said with a small smile. "You're more than learning. You're thriving." Dr. Hayes paused. "I wanted to tell you, the board approved my proposal to create a permanent patient advocacy director position, someone to oversee all our accessibility programs and ensure we're actually serving patients, not just appearing to. I'd like to offer you the role." Lily stared at her. "A permanent position? At Grant Pharmaceuticals?" "Full-time, with salary and benefits that reflect the importance of the work. You've proven yourself over and over. It's time to make this official." "But I don't have a degree." "You have something better. Lived experience, proven results, and the respect of everyone you've worked with. What do you say?" Lily thought about the diner, about Martha and the regulars who'd become family. But she also thought about the emails from people the program had helped, about the possibility of expanding this work, about building a career around something that genuinely mattered. "Can I give you an answer by Friday? I need to think about it." "Of course. Take your time." That night, Lily met Martha at the diner after closing. She laid out the offer, the opportunity, the conflict she felt about potentially leaving. Martha listened quietly, then smiled. "Honey, you know I'd love to keep you here. You're the best waitress I've ever had, and I'll miss you terribly. But this is your chance to do something bigger than slinging coffee and burgers. But this place saved me when I needed saving. You gave me a job when I was desperate. How can I just leave? You're not just leaving. You're graduating to something that uses all your gifts." Martha took her hand. "I'm proud of you, Lily. Your mum would be proud of you too. You took your struggles and turned them into purpose. That's extraordinary." "I'm scared," Lily admitted. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail?" "Then you'll learn and try again. But staying here out of fear isn't living, it's hiding. And you're done hiding." Lily called Dr. Hayes the next morning and accepted the position. 2 weeks later, she worked her last shift at the diner. The regulars threw her a party, Martha cried and pretended she wasn't, and Lily walked out of the place that had been her refuge, feeling bittersweet but ready for what came next. 1 year after they met at Mitchell's pharmacy, Ethan took Lily back to that same location. She thought they were just visiting to check on how the assistance program was working at ground level. But when they walked inside, Helen the pharmacist was waiting with a knowing smile. "Good to see you both. Lily, there's something in your old prescription records that needs your attention." Confused, Lily followed Helen to the counter. There, where her prescription had once been rung up for $32 she couldn't afford, was a small velvet box. Lily's breath caught. She turned to find Ethan kneeling behind her, his expression nervous and hopeful. "Lily, a year ago I watched you choose between breathing and eating, and it broke something open in me. You reminded me what compassion looks like, what courage looks like, what using privilege responsibly looks like. You've challenged me, changed me, and made me want to be the kind of person who deserves you." He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. "I love you more than I thought I could love anyone. Will you marry me?" Lily was crying, laughing, overwhelmed. "Yes, absolutely yes." Ethan slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss while Helen applauded and other pharmacy customers, in on the surprise, cheered. "I wanted to propose here," Ethan explained, "where everything started, where the worst moment of your day became the best moment of mine." "I love you," Lily said, still crying, "even though you're incredibly dramatic." "You make me want to be dramatic. You make me want to be everything." 18 months after Lily couldn't afford a $32 inhaler, she stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., testifying before a congressional committee on healthcare accessibility. Beside her was Ethan, there to discuss how pharmaceutical companies could implement programs like Lily's Breath. The program had expanded beyond Grant Pharmaceuticals. 5 other major companies had adopted similar models, helping over 200,000 people nationwide access medications they otherwise couldn't afford. Lily's work as patient advocacy director had been featured in national media, and she'd become a voice for people navigating the impossible intersection of poverty and healthcare. After her testimony, a young woman approached her in the hallway. "Ms. Carter, I just wanted to thank you. I heard about your program on the news. I have diabetes and couldn't afford my insulin. Your program saved my life, literally." Lily hugged her, tears in her eyes. "That's why we do this work, so people like us don't have to choose between treatment and survival." That evening, she and Ethan walked along the National Mall, hand in hand, reflecting on the journey. "Do you ever think about how differently things could have gone?" Lily asked. "If you hadn't been at that pharmacy that day? If you'd just ignored me?" "I think we would have found each other somehow," Ethan said. "Maybe not the same way, but somehow some connections are inevitable. That's very romantic and completely unprovable. Probably, but I like believing it anyway." They stopped at the Lincoln Memorial, looking out at the reflecting pool. "I have something for you," Ethan said, pulling out a small wrapped package. Lily opened it to find a framed photo, the very first prescription receipt from the day they met, showing the $32 charge that had started everything, with a handwritten note beneath. "The best $32 I never expected to spend. Thank you for showing me what matters. E." "You kept this?" Lily asked, incredulous. "Helen gave it to me the day I proposed. She'd saved it. Thought I might want it someday." He wrapped his arms around her. "That receipt represents the moment my life changed, when I stopped seeing business as just numbers and started seeing the people behind them. When I met the woman who'd become my partner in everything." Lily leaned into him, looking at the simple piece of paper that represented so much more than a transaction. "I used to be ashamed of that day, of being so broke I couldn't afford basic medication. Now I see it as the day everything began. The program, my career, us. Funny how perspective changes. You changed my perspective on everything. Before you, success meant profit margins and market share. Now it means the emails we get from people who can finally afford their medications, the families who don't have to make impossible choices. That's real success." "We should get married soon," Lily said suddenly. "I don't want to wait anymore." Ethan pulled back to look at her. "I thought you wanted a long engagement, time to plan properly." "I did, but I've realized something. All the fancy planning in the world doesn't matter as much as just being married to you, starting our life together." She smiled. "What if we did something simple, just close family and friends? I'd marry you tomorrow if that's what you wanted. How about next month? Small ceremony, maybe at the diner where we had our first real conversation?" Ethan laughed, his eyes bright with love. "Martha would love that. And honestly, so would I. Let's do it." 4 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, Lily Carter married Ethan Grant in Martha's diner. The ceremony was intimate. Eleanor, Ethan's mother, crying happy tears in the front row, Dr. Hayes and the team from Grant Pharmaceuticals who'd become genuine friends, the diner regulars who'd watched Lily struggle and triumph, and Helen from Mitchell's Pharmacy, who'd witnessed both the worst and best moments of their story. Martha officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. "We're gathered here today to celebrate something that started with a $32 inhaler and became a love story that changed thousands of lives. That's the power of paying attention, of caring when it's easier not to, of seeing people instead of looking past them." Lily wore a simple white dress she'd found at a consignment shop, refusing Ethan's offers to buy her something expensive. "This is more us," she'd insisted. Ethan wore a suit but had replaced his usual expensive tie with one Lily had bought him, dark blue with tiny coffee cups, a nod to their countless conversations over coffee. When it came time for vows, Lily went first. "Ethan, you saw me on the worst day I'd had in months. I was broke, scared, and convinced I was invisible to people like you. But you didn't just see me. You cared enough to help. Then you cared enough to listen. Then you cared enough to change your entire company's approach because of what one struggling person told you. You taught me that my experiences have value, that my voice matters, that I'm worthy of love and success, and everything I'd stopped letting myself dream about. I promise to keep challenging you, keep being honest with you, and keep loving you exactly as you are." Ethan's voice was rough with emotion when he spoke. "Lily, the day I met you, I was successful but hollow. I'd built everything I thought I wanted and realized it meant nothing because I'd forgotten why my father started this company, to help people, not just to profit from them. You reminded me of that purpose. But more than that, you showed me what real strength looks like. You survived poverty, loss, and impossible choices, and somehow stayed kind and hopeful and determined to make things better for others. You're the most extraordinary person I've ever met, and I promise to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you." Martha pronounced them married, and the diner erupted in cheers. The reception was potluck, with everyone bringing dishes, nothing fancy, just good food and genuine celebration. Eleanor sat with the diner regulars, swapping stories about Ethan and Lily. Dr. Hayes danced with Helen, the pharmacist, and Lily and Ethan stood in the middle of the diner they both loved, surrounded by people who'd witnessed their journey, feeling more blessed than any expensive wedding could have made them. During the toasts, the young woman who'd thanked Lily after her congressional testimony stood up. "I know I wasn't invited to this, I kind of crashed, but I had to come. Ms. Carter, Mr. Grant, your program saved my life. I wanted you to know that, on your wedding day. You're not just married to each other, you're married to a mission that matters. Thank you for that." Lily went to hug her, and suddenly a dozen other people stood up, all of them beneficiaries of the assistance program, all of them wanting to share how it had changed their lives. The wedding became an impromptu celebration, not just of marriage, but of the work that had brought them all together. 2 years after their wedding, Lily stood in the renovated community center in her old neighborhood, cutting the ribbon on the Lily's Breath Resource Center. The facility offered more than just medication assistance. It provided health education, connection to social services, job training, and support groups for people navigating the challenges of poverty and illness. "This center represents everything we've learned," Lily told the crowd at the opening ceremony. "That access to medication is important, but it's not enough. People need comprehensive support, community connection, and the dignity of being seen as whole human beings, not just patients or statistics." Ethan stood beside her, their 6-month-old daughter, Hope, sleeping in a carrier on his chest. Named after what they'd found in each other, Hope represented the future they were building, not just for themselves but for everyone the program served. The program had grown beyond anything they'd imagined. Lily's Breath now operated in all 50 states, had helped over 500,000 people, and had inspired legislation requiring pharmaceutical companies to provide accessible assistance programs. Lily had become a national advocate for healthcare reform, testifying regularly before Congress and appearing on news programs to discuss the human impact of medical costs. But she always came back to the individual stories, the single mother who could finally afford her child's insulin, the elderly man who didn't have to choose between heart medication and groceries, the young woman with asthma who could breathe easily without financial panic. Each story reminded her why this work mattered. 5 years after meeting at Mitchell's pharmacy, Lily and Ethan returned there for an anniversary visit. The pharmacy had a small plaque now, commemorating the location where the assistance program was born. Helen had retired but came in specially to see them. "You two changed my job," she told them over coffee in the pharmacy's small cafe area. "I used to go home every night heartbroken about the people I couldn't help. Now I actually can help them. Do you know what that feels like? To be able to say, yes, we can cover that, instead of watching people leave empty-handed. It's because of you too, Lily said. You're the one who told Ethan how often people couldn't afford their medications. You witnessed what was happening and cared enough to share it. Helen smiled. I witnessed a lot over 32 years, but I'll never forget watching that young man pay for a stranger's inhaler and thinking, maybe there's hope after all. Turns out I was right. As they left the pharmacy, Ethan took Lily's hand. Do you ever miss it? The simpler life before all of this? Lily thought about her tiny apartment, the double shifts at the diner, the constant anxiety about money. I miss certain things, the closeness of that community, the simplicity of my concerns, but I don't miss the fear, the impossible choices, the feeling of being invisible. She squeezed his hand. This life, complicated as it is better. Because I can actually help people instead of just surviving alongside them. Any regrets? Only one. What's that? That I can't go back and tell 26-year-old me that the worst day of her life would become the best thing that ever happened to her. That the man who paid for her inhaler would become her husband and partner in changing how an entire industry works. She smiled. But maybe it's better she didn't know. Maybe the surprise is part of what made it magical. 10 years after they met, Lily stood at a podium accepting a humanitarian award for her work on healthcare accessibility. The ceremony was formal, black tie, seated dinner, speeches from dignitaries. Everything her 26-year-old self would have found intimidating and alien. But when she stepped to the microphone, she didn't talk about statistics or policy wins. She told a story. 10 years ago, I stood in a pharmacy with $10 and needed medication that cost $32. I was terrified, embarrassed, and certain I was invisible to everyone around me. But one person saw me. One person cared enough to help. And that single act of kindness started a chain reaction that's helped over 1 million people access medications they couldn't otherwise afford. She found Ethan in the audience, sitting with Hope and their 3-year-old son, Daniel. I'm accepting this award not just for myself, but for every person who's ever had to choose between treatment and other necessities. For every pharmacist who's watched people leave without needed medication. For every family member who's watched someone they love suffer because healthcare is a privilege instead of a right. This award represents all of us working to change that reality. The standing ovation was thunderous, but Lily barely noticed. She was looking at her family, at the life she'd built from the ruins of that terrible day when she couldn't afford an inhaler. At the purpose she'd found, the love she'd discovered, the change she'd helped create. After the ceremony, as they drove home, Daniel asked sleepily from his car seat, "Mama, why do you help people get medicine?" Lily turned to look at her son. "Because once upon a time, someone helped me when I really needed it. And I learned that kindness doesn't end with one person. It ripples out and touches everyone. So now I help others, and hopefully they'll help someone else someday." Like paying it forward? Exactly like that, baby. When I grow up, I want to help people too. Lily felt tears forming. Then you will, because that's what our family does. 20 years later, Lily sat on a bench outside Mitchell's pharmacy, now a historical landmark with a permanent exhibit about the origins of accessible healthcare programs. She was 66 years old, retired from her formal position, but still active in advocacy work. Ethan sat beside her, his hair silver now, but his eyes still bright when he looked at her. "Do you remember what you were thinking that day?" he asked. "Standing in line, waiting to find out if you could afford your medication?" "I remember thinking my life was small and getting smaller, that I'd never be more than just someone struggling to survive." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I couldn't have imagined this, any of this. The work we'd build, the family we'd create, the lives we'd touch. I remember thinking I was going through the motions of a life that looked successful but felt empty," Ethan said. "Then I saw you, and something shifted. Like I'd been waiting for someone to remind me what actually mattered." A young woman approached them hesitantly. "Excuse me, are you Lily Carter?" "I am. I just wanted to say thank you. Your program helped my mom afford her cancer medications. She's been in remission for 3 years now." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "You saved her life." Lily stood and hugged her. "The program saved her life. I just helped create it. You did more than that. You proved that one person can make a difference, that regular people can change systems that seem unchangeable." After the woman left, Ethan pulled Lily close. "Still think your life was meant to be small?" "No," Lily said, smiling through tears. "I think maybe it had to be small first so I'd understand what it felt like. So when I had the chance to make it bigger, I'd use that bigness to help people still living in the smallness I'd escaped." They sat together as the sun set, two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way and built something extraordinary from the most ordinary moment, a transaction at a pharmacy counter, a choice to help instead of looking away, a conversation that became a partnership, that became a mission that touched millions of lives. The plaque beside the pharmacy entrance read, "On this site, compassion met courage, and together they changed the world." Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the greatest transformations. And underneath, in smaller letters, "Lily's breath began here. May it continue forever." Sometimes the worst moments of our lives become doorways to the best chapters. Sometimes being seen by one person is enough to change everything. Sometimes kindness doesn't just help one person, it creates ripples that touch thousands. If this story moved you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that their struggle has purpose, that their voice matters, that one act of compassion can transform the world. Leave a comment about a time someone's kindness changed your trajectory, or a time you helped someone else. And remember, you have the power to see people, to care when it's easier not to use whatever resources you have to make life better for someone who's struggling. That power is more valuable than money. That choice is more important than success. That compassion is what makes us truly wealthy. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep seeing people, keep caring, and keep believing that love and purpose can transform everything.